The news of Daniel and Emily's rescue spread through Willow Creek faster than the wind. Church bells rang, neighbors cheered, and strangers hugged each other in the streets.
Whoa.
People who had not spoken for years now stood together, crying happy tears. The small town felt alive again, filled with hope and thankfulness. For 6 years, Willow Creek had lived with a question that no one could answer. Now that question had a face, a voice, and a heartwarming ending. Emily and Daniel stayed in the hospital for a few days, where doctors checked them carefully. Daniel's hair had turned gray, and his face was tired, but there was a gentle smile when he looked at his daughter. Emily was thinner and taller than people remembered. She was shy at first, not used to all the noise and bright lights, but her eyes sparkled with curiosity. Nurses brought her coloring books and soft blankets, and every day Mia visited, holding her hand and telling her about all that had happened in Willow Creek since she was gone. When they were ready, Daniel and Emily finally left the hospital. Their homecoming was simple, but full of love. Emily's grandparents hugged her tightly, crying and laughing at the same time. Daniel's old friends came by, shaking his hand, and promising that they always believed in him. People left flowers and notes on their front porch. And someone even planted a new tree in the yard, a symbol of new beginnings. The first days back were not easy. Life had changed so much while they were away. Emily had to get used to sleeping in a real bed, taking hot showers, and hearing the sounds of cars and people outside the window. She missed the quiet of the woods, but loved the taste of fresh bread and ice cream. Daniel was nervous around crowds and worried about what people thought of him. He wondered if he had made the right choices, but every time he saw Emily's smile, he felt a little more sure. At school, Emily felt like a stranger. Kids whispered in the hallways and stared at her, curious about her life in the forest. Mia stayed by her side, introducing her to new friends and helping her with homework. The teachers were gentle, giving Emily time to adjust and telling her it was okay to ask for help. Sometimes Emily felt overwhelmed, but Mia always reminded her to be patient with herself. Slowly, she began to share her story, how she learned to fish, make fires, and find beauty in every little thing. Even when life was hard, the community did its best to welcome Daniel and Emily back. The mayor held a small ceremony at the park where he thanked everyone who had searched, hoped, and never gave up. Emily's favorite bench was decorated with ribbons, and people brought drawings and letters for her. The town created a memory garden with a plaque that read, "Hope never gives up." Children played nearby, their laughter echoing through the trees. As the weeks went by, Daniel had to answer many questions from the police and reporters. Some people wanted to blame him for disappearing, asking why he didn't call for help or return sooner. Daniel explained his fear of being blamed and his wish to keep Emily safe. He spoke honestly about his mistakes, but also about the love and trust that helped them survive. The police decided not to charge Daniel, understanding that his choices came from love, not from any bad intention. People in Willow Creek slowly accepted the truth. Some still had doubts, but most felt nothing but relief and joy. Emily found comfort in her old hobbies, painting, drawing, and writing stories. She wrote about her time in the forest, filling notebooks with memories of stars, birds, and the sound of wind in the trees. She joined the art club at school, and her pictures were filled with color and light. Mia helped her join the soccer team, and soon Emily was running across the field, laughing with her new friends. Her old shyness faded, replaced by confidence and kindness. Daniel started working in the community garden, growing vegetables and flowers for the town. He liked the quiet work and the feeling of life returning. Neighbors often stopped to chat, bringing coffee and stories. Daniel apologized to those he hurt by leaving, and many people forgave him. He spent long evenings talking to Emily, listening to her dreams and promising her that she was never alone. The whole town was touched by the story. People remembered the power of hope, the importance of family, and the way love can survive even the hardest days. Emily's old teachers used her story as a lesson, teaching students that even when life feels dark, there is always a reason to keep believing. Parents hugged their children tighter, friends supported each other, and strangers were kinder in the grocery store. As spring came, Willow Creek felt brighter. Emily and Mia walked through the park, watching birds and picking wildflowers. Sometimes, they sat on the memory bench and talked about dreams for the future. Emily wanted to travel, see new places, and help other children who felt lost. Mia dreamed of being a writer, telling stories that would give hope to others. At night, Daniel and Emily sat together on the porch watching the stars. They talked about their time in the forest not with sadness, but with gratitude. Often said, "We survived because we never gave up on each other." Emily nodded, holding his hand, knowing that even when the world felt big and scary, love would always find a way home. 6 years ago, Daniel and Emily vanished on a simple, hot air balloon ride, leaving a town in sadness and confusion. Now, their return had brought healing, new friendships, and a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures happen not in the places we plan, but in the journeys we never expect. The people of Willow Creek would never forget the lesson that hope, courage, and love could bring even the most lost travelers safely home. The discovery of Emily's notebook and bracelet brought a new sense of hope to Willow Creek. People who once thought Daniel and Emily were gone forever now believed in miracles again. Detective Lee and his team grew more determined. They spent hours looking at old maps, reading every word in Emily's notebook, and following any tips that came in, no matter how small. The police set up a special number, and soon, calls were pouring in from across the state. One day, a call came from a man named Mr. Walters, who lived in a small town far from Willow Creek. He said he had seen a man and a girl who matched the descriptions of Daniel and Emily. They had arrived one evening at the local grocery store, looking tired and hungry. The man paid in cash and spoke softly, while the girl stayed close. Watching everything with wide eyes, Mr. Walters remembered the girl's bright bracelet and her curly hair. I'd always wondered about them, especially when they left town. A few days later, just as quietly as they had arrived, Detective Lee took this tip seriously. He and a partner drove to the town, talking to shopkeepers and neighbors. They pieced together a path that Daniel and Emily might have taken, always moving, always careful to stay unnoticed. The police checked bus stations, diners, and even campgrounds. Over time, a pattern started to form. Daniel and Emily would stay in one place for a little while, then move on. It was almost as if they were hiding from something, or someone, or maybe just too scared to go back to their old life. All the while, Emily's notebook provided more hints. She wrote about making fires, fishing in streams, and watching the stars at night. She mentioned missing her mother and thinking about her old home, but she never wrote about being afraid of her father. Instead, she described him teaching her how to stay safe, how to build a shelter, and how to keep a promise. The notebook showed a life that was difficult, but also full of love and trust. Months passed, and then a real breakthrough came from an unexpected place. A retired forest ranger named Ms. Branson was organizing her old papers when she came across a logbook from 6 years ago. In it, she had written about seeing a small campfire deep in the woods, far from any trails. She had also found footprints, one large and one small, near a hidden spring. At the time, she thought it was just a camper and their child. But now, with the news of the missing pair, she wondered if it had been Daniel and Emily all along. Detective Lee and his team rushed to the spot described in the logbook.
Ow.
A group of volunteers and began searching the forest inch by inch. It was hard work, but they refused to give up. After several days, they found signs of an old campsite, stones from a fire ring, a rusted tin can, and finally, a faded piece of blue cloth stuck on a branch the same color as Emily's jacket from the day she disappeared. The search party grew more excited. They searched deeper, looking for any other sign of life. One morning, as the sun was rising, a volunteer spotted a thin line of smoke rising between the trees. Quietly, the group moved closer. There, hidden in a small clearing, was a tiny cabin made from fallen logs and branches. Smoke curled from a small chimney. The cabin looked well built, but it was clear that someone had been living simply. With little contact from the outside world, Detective Lee approached the cabin carefully, calling out, "Hello.
Ow.
Is anyone there?" For a few moments there was only silence. Then, the door slowly opened. Standing there was a man with a scruffy beard and tired eyes. It was Daniel. Behind him, peeking out nervously, was a teenage girl with wild curly hair and a face that seemed both familiar and changed by time. It was Emily. There were tears in everyone's eyes. Daniel stepped outside, shielding Emily gently with his arm. He looked at Detective Lee, unsure if he should run or trust. Emily, taller now, stared at the group, her eyes wide with surprise and fear. For a moment, no one spoke. Finally, Detective Lee lowered his voice and said softly, "It's okay. You're safe now. We've been looking for you for a very long time." Emily glanced at her father, then stepped forward, her voice shaky but strong. "Is Mia here?" she asked, her first thought going to her best friend. Within minutes, word spread through Willow Creek and beyond. Reporters rushed to the town, neighbors cried with joy, and Mia hugged her mother and shouted, "She's alive! She's alive!" Daniel and Emily were taken to a hospital where doctors checked them for any health problems. Emily was thin and pale, but healthy. Daniel had a few old injuries but was mostly okay, as Daniel and Emily began to recover. The world wanted to know what had happened. News crews set up outside the hospital and people everywhere waited for answers. At first, Daniel was quiet. He didn't want to talk to anyone but Emily and the doctors. But after a few days, he agreed to tell his story, hoping to end the rumors and give people the truth. Daniel explained that on the day of the balloon ride, strong winds had forced them to crash land deep in the forest. The pilot, Mr. Carter, had injured his leg and could not travel far. Daniel built a shelter and took care of both Emily and the pilot. After several days, Mr. Carter became weak and passed away, leaving Daniel and Emily alone. Daniel tried to find help, but every time he left, he worried about leaving Emily by herself. So, they decided to survive together. He explained that at first, he hoped they would be found. But days turned into weeks, and Daniel grew afraid. He worried that people might blame him for the crash, or that Emily would be taken away from him, because they survived alone. He started moving them from place to place, teaching Emily how to live off the land. Over time, they built their own little world in the woods, far from everyone. Emily told the doctors that even though she missed her old life, Michelle had never felt unloved or scared with her father. She learned to fish, to build fires, and to find wild berries. She kept a notebook, writing about her dreams, her memories, and her hope of seeing Mia again. As the days went by, Daniel realized he had to face the world. He told Emily, "We can't hide forever. It's time to go home." That's when they built the cabin and waited for the right moment, hoping somehow that someone would find them and understand why they stayed away for so long. For Willow Creek, the truth was both sad and beautiful. The father and daughter had survived against all odds, finding love and hope even in the darkest times. Now, after 6 long years, their story was finally ready to be told, and the town prepared to welcome them back with open arms. 6 years had slipped by since Daniel and Emily disappeared into the clouds. For many in Willow Creek, the pain had faded, but for a few, it remained as sharp as ever. Life moved on, the seasons changed, children grew older, and the memory of the missing father and daughter became a gentle ache, like a song you can't quite forget. But all of that changed one quiet Saturday morning when an unexpected clue turned the whole story upside down. It started with a local hiker named Mrs. Logan, who loved exploring the woods around Willow Creek. She had walked the forest trails for years, often picking wildflowers or collecting shiny rocks for her grandchildren. On this morning, she decided to take a new path through a dense thicket that she had never explored before. The air was cool, and birds chirped overhead as she pushed through the tall grass. Suddenly, something shiny caught her eye near the roots of an old tree. She bent down and brushed aside some leaves. There, half buried in the dirt, was a small, colorful bracelet handmade with pink, yellow, and blue beads. It was dirty, but still bright, and it had a tiny charm shaped like a butterfly. Mrs. Logan's heart raced. She remembered seeing Emily wear a bracelet just like this one in the old news stories. Carefully, she picked it up, wiped it clean, and hurried back to town. The news spread quickly. When Mrs. Logan showed the bracelet to Emily's grandparents, they burst into tears. It was Emily's favorite bracelet, made for her by Mia at a birthday party the year before the balloon ride. Soon, police officers were back in the woods. Searching the area where the bracelet was found, volunteers joined in, hoping this clue would finally lead to answers. Detective Lee, who had worked the case years ago, returned to Willow Creek to lead the search. He had never stopped thinking about Daniel and Emily. Now, with a real clue in his hands, he felt a spark of hope. He called in experts to look for footprints, broken branches, or any other sign that someone had lived or traveled in the woods. For days, teams combed the area, but nothing else was found. Still, the bracelet was proof that Daniel and Emily had been there, alive, after the balloon vanished. News of the discovery brought old memories back to the surface. Television reporters arrived in Willow Creek again, filming outside the park and interviewing anyone who would talk. Old neighbors remembered things they hadn't thought about in years: a strange light in the sky, a sound in the distance, a feeling that something wasn't right. Some people even shared their old photos and videos from the day of the balloon ride, hoping to spot something new. Detective Lee decided to review all the evidence again, starting from the very beginning. He asked for tips from the public and spoke to anyone who remembered even the smallest detail. It was a slow, careful process. One day, a gas station clerk in a town 20 miles away called the police. She remembered seeing a man and a young girl who looked lost come into the station the afternoon of the balloon ride. The girl wore a yellow dress and a bracelet with bright beads. At the time, she thought nothing of it, but after seeing the news, she felt certain it was Daniel and Emily. Police checked the old security camera footage. Most of the tapes were gone, but one blurry image showed a man holding a girl's hand, walking toward the vending machines. The clerk said the man seemed nervous, glancing around as if he was worried someone would recognize him. The girl looked tired and dirty, but she held onto the man's hand tightly. It wasn't clear what happened next, but it was enough for Detective Lee to believe that Daniel and Emily had survived the crash and somehow made it out of the woods, at least for a little while. As the investigation picked up speed, new questions appeared. If Daniel and Emily made it to the gas station, why didn't they call for help? Did someone help them? Or did they keep running, hiding from something or someone? Theories spread quickly. Some thought Daniel was running from a problem. Maybe he was in trouble and wanted to disappear. Others believed he was trying to protect Emily from something. Still others said perhaps they were lost and scared and just kept moving, too afraid to ask for help. Emily's friend Mia felt a mix of hope and confusion. She had never stopped believing Emily was alive, but now she wondered what had really happened. She wrote another letter and hung it in the wishing tree, this time saying, "Emily, if you see this, please come home. We miss you every day." That night, she dreamed of her friend walking out of the forest, smiling and waving. The town buzzed with new energy. People started sharing old stories again. One hunter remembered finding a piece of blue fabric snagged on a fence deep in the woods years ago, but hadn't thought much about it. A farmer said he'd once seen smoke from a hidden campfire on a foggy morning, but it was gone by the time he got there. The more people talked, the more little details came together, forming a puzzle that was still missing its biggest pieces. Detective Lee's team made maps of every clue: the bracelet, the gas station, the campfire. They talked to everyone in nearby towns, asking about strangers or families who seemed out of place. One day, a woman in a small village mentioned seeing a father and daughter who kept to themselves, living in a tiny house at the edge of town for a few months before disappearing one night. No one knew where they went. Then came the biggest surprise. Yet, a volunteer searching a back road found an old, weathered notebook in the hollow of a tree, sealed in a plastic bag. Inside were sketches of birds, trees, and a hot air balloon, along with short notes about daily life. Saw a deer today.
I made a fire, Miss Mom.
The handwriting was small and neat, clearly a child's, when shown to Emily's grandparents. They recognized the handwriting as Emily's, from her old school papers. This notebook changed everything. The words were careful and hopeful, but also lonely. It was clear Daniel and Emily had survived for a time, living quietly. perhaps hoping to be found or perhaps too afraid to come out of hiding now. Everyone wanted to know why. Detective Lee and the police promised to search harder than ever. They followed every lead, no matter how small. The town waited, holding its breath. Mia visited the bench in the park and talked to her missing friend, sharing the news and promising she wouldn't give up. For Willow Creek, the bracelet, the notebook, and the stories were more than just clues. They were signs that Daniel and Matt, Emily's story, wasn't over. Somewhere out there, a father and daughter had survived against all odds. And as the investigation grew, so did hope. As everyone wondered what the next clue would reveal and what truth was finally waiting to be discovered. Days passed since Daniel and Emily vanished in the hot air balloon. What started as a community event had now turned into a town-wide heartbreak. Every morning, people woke up hoping for some good news, but each day brought only more questions and sadness. Search and rescue teams still combed the woods and rivers, but hope was fading. The local newspaper ran headlines every day about the missing father and daughter, showing old pictures of them smiling at the park or riding bikes together. Daniel's home became a quiet, sad place. His parents came from another town and stayed, sitting by the phone and talking to police officers every day. Emily's bedroom was left just as it was, with her favorite books on the shelf and her drawings taped to the wall. Her best friend Mia visited almost every afternoon, leaving little notes or drawings at the front door, messages of hope, stories, or just a simple "I miss you." Daniel's neighbors brought food and offered hugs, but the house felt emptier than ever. The people of Willow Creek couldn't stop talking about what happened. At the grocery store, on the school bus, at church, everywhere people went, they wondered what went wrong. Some blamed the weather, saying it changed too quickly for anyone to predict. Others blamed the balloon pilot, even though Mr. Carter's family insisted he had always been careful. Some whispered about the possibility of a mechanical failure. Few people, especially those who didn't know Daniel very well, even began to wonder if something else had happened. A little tired that week? Did he look worried before the flight? Rumors started to spread, and people's imaginations ran wild. As the days became weeks, the official search slowed down. Helicopters and search dogs had found nothing. The police said they would keep the case open, but with no new clues, there was little they could do. Still, some people couldn't let go. Mia's mom helped organize community walks through the woods every weekend. A group of hikers from a nearby town joined in, bringing their own maps and equipment. But every search ended the same way, with tired, muddy shoes and heavy hearts. Emily's school held a special assembly. Teachers and students shared memories of Emily, her bright smile, her questions about the stars, her love for painting and music. Mia got up in front of everyone and read a letter she had written to her missing friend. The whole gym was quiet as Mia talked about how she believed Emily was out there somewhere waiting to come home. Months turned into a year, and life in Willow Creek slowly started to change. People had to go back to their routines. Emily's classmates moved on to the next grade. Daniel's garden, once full of flowers and vegetables, grew wild and messy. The town put up a small bench in the park, with a plaque that read, "In hope of homecoming." It became a quiet place where people went to remember Daniel and Emily, to sit and think, or leave flowers. Yet the story of the missing balloon ride refused to fade. Every now and then a TV reporter would come to Willow Creek to do a follow-up story. Some brought in experts who talked about wind patterns and survival in the wilderness. Sometimes a psychic claimed to have seen Daniel and Emily in a dream, which only confused people more. New rumors always followed, but none of them brought real answers. For Daniel's parents, every day was a struggle. They spoke to detectives, followed every new tip, and sometimes even searched the woods themselves. They kept Emily's birthday cake tradition alive, baking a cake each year and leaving a slice on the windowsill. For Daniel, they wrote letters, telling him about life in Willow Creek and how much everyone missed him. Mia never gave up hope. Every week, she wrote a letter to Emily and dropped it in the town's wishing tree, an old oak in the park where kids hung messages for lost pets, wishes, or prayers. Some of Mia's letters were just a few lines like, "I hope you're safe. while others were longer, filled with stories of things happening at school or around town. Time kept moving, but for some people, the mystery only grew deeper. Emily's grandparents hired a private detective, Mr. Jacobs, who had a quiet way of asking questions and taking notes. He reviewed every police report and revisited every spot where someone thought they had seen something strange on the day of the balloon ride. He found an old farmer who said he saw a bright balloon drifting over the far ridge that afternoon, but no one could find proof. There were also some people who started to wonder if maybe Daniel had planned to disappear. He had once talked about moving to the mountains, they said. Others rejected this idea. Daniel loved Willow Creek. He loved his job, his friends, and most of all, Emily. Why would he ever leave on purpose? Emily's absence was felt most at her school and with her friends. During art class, kids still painted pictures of balloons and blue skies. The teachers put up all of Emily's artwork on a special wall. At lunch, Mia often sat alone, staring out the window and thinking about her friend. She kept a photo of her and Emily together on her desk at home, a reminder that hope was still alive. Over the years, as the story turned into legend, it began to change. Some said the balloon was taken by a giant windstorm and carried far, far away. Others said Daniel and Emily were living in a hidden cabin, waiting for the right time to come back. Kids whispered about secret messages or clues hidden in the forest. People grew older, some moved away, but no one really forgot what had happened. Every spring, on the anniversary of the balloon ride, the town held a small candlelight vigil at the park bench. People brought flowers and candles. They shared stories and memories, hoping that somehow Daniel and Emily could hear them wherever they were. For a few hours, the whole community came together, united by hope in the memory of a father and daughter who had once filled their town with laughter and love. Still, beneath the surface, there was always a quiet Ica feeling that something important was missing. Willow Creek was not the same. The joyful sound of Emily's laughter, Daniel's calm voice, their bright faces in the park, they were gone but not forgotten. In the quiet moments, people still glanced up at the sky, hoping for a miracle, wishing for an answer to the question that wouldn't go away. Where did Daniel and Emily go, and would they ever come home? As the 6th year since their disappearance approached, most people believed the mystery would never be solved. But in the hearts of those who loved them, hope remained, stubborn and bright. And somewhere out in the world, a secret waited to be discovered, a secret that would change everything the town thought it knew about that fateful day. On a bright and sunny morning, the little town of Willow Creek was buzzing with excitement. The air was fresh, the sky was blue, and everyone seemed to be smiling. It was the weekend, and people gathered in the park for a special event that didn't happen every day. A hot air balloon was ready for its flight, and almost everyone in town had come to see it rise. In the middle of the crowd was a single father named Daniel and his 10-year-old daughter, Emily's daughter was well known in the community. He was friendly, kind, and always willing to help others. After Emily's mother passed away when Emily was just 3, Daniel had poured all his love into raising his little girl. They did almost everything together, reading stories, cooking, fishing, and going on small adventures. Daniel always said, "Emily, life is about making memories." This was the reason why he had saved up for months to surprise Emily with a hot air balloon ride for her birthday. Emily, with her bright eyes and wild curly hair, was full of energy and dreams. She loved the sky, birds, and the idea of flying. Her friends often joked that Emily would someday grow wings and fly away. When Daniel told her about the birthday surprise, Emily couldn't believe her ears. She jumped up and hugged him tight. "Are we really going up in the sky?" she asked, her eyes shining. Daniel smiled and nodded. On the day of the ride, Emily wore her favorite yellow dress and held tightly to Daniel's hand as they walked to the field where the big, colorful balloon was waiting. The pilot, a cheerful man named Mr. Carter, greeted them with a smile. "Are you two ready for an adventure?" he asked. Daniel nodded, but Emily was so excited she could barely speak. The basket was bigger than she had imagined, and the balloon was a patchwork of bright colors glowing in the sunlight. People from all over town had come to watch the launch. Emily's best friend Mia waved from the crowd. Some neighbors took pictures, others cheered and clapped. Even the mayor was there giving a little speech about chasing dreams and new beginnings. Daniel felt proud as he watched Emily wave back. At everyone, her face lit up with pure joy. Soon, it was time to board the basket. Daniel helped Emily climb in, then stepped in himself. Mr. Carter checked everything twice. He talked about safety, and everyone listened carefully. Daniel looked down at the crowd one last time, holding Emily close. "Ready, kiddo?" he whispered. Emily nodded, and then whoosh. The burners roared, and the balloon started to rise. The ground slipped away slowly, and the people below became smaller and smaller. Up in the balloon, everything felt peaceful. The wind was gentle, and the view was breathtaking. Emily gasped as she looked down at the tiny houses, green fields, and winding river. She reached for Daniel's hand, and he squeezed it gently. "We're really flying, Dad," she said, laughing with happiness. Daniel took pictures, wanting to capture every moment. For a while, everything was perfect. The balloon drifted higher, and Mr. Carter pointed out landmarks in the distance. Emily asked 100 questions about the sky, the clouds, and how balloons worked. Daniel felt a deep sense of gratitude. He was glad to give Emily a memory she would cherish forever, but as they drifted over the hills, the wind began to change. At first it was just a little stronger, and Mr. Carter didn't seem worried. But soon clouds started to gather, and the balloon began to sway more than before. Daniel felt a knot in his stomach, but he tried to stay calm for Emily. The pilot spoke quietly into his radio, trying to reach someone on the ground. Down below, the crowd noticed the balloon drifting further away than planned. Some people pointed, while others whispered nervously. Mia tugged on her mother's sleeve, asking if Emily was okay. The mayor called the balloon company to check if everything was normal. Up in the sky, Daniel watched as Mr. Carter pulled on ropes and adjusted the burners, but the balloon didn't respond the way he wanted. The wind was pushing them toward a thick patch of woods at the edge of town, a place that was hard to reach by road. Daniel hugged Emily close and whispered, "It's going to be okay, sweetheart." Emily tried to be brave, but she could see the worry in her father's eyes. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind hit the balloon, pushing it even faster toward the distant forest. Mr. Carter tried to bring the balloon down, searching for a safe place to land, but the trees below were thick and the hills were steep. The radio crackled, but no one answered. Daniel held Emily tight, feeling powerless. Back in the town, people watched as the balloon became small against the gray sky. Then it vanished behind the hills. Panic spread through the crowd. The event organizer called for help, and soon, police, firefighters, and rescue workers were racing to the forest edge. Mia cried, clinging to her mother. The mayor promised to do everything possible to bring Daniel and Emily home safely. Hours passed. Search teams scoured the area by foot, vehicle, and even a small rescue helicopter. They called out for Daniel and Emily, hoping for a response. Night fell, and rain began to pour, making the search even harder. But the people of Willow Creek didn't give up. Volunteers brought food, flashlights, and blankets for the rescuers. Everyone hoped for a miracle. Days went by. The search covered miles of dense forest, rivers, and open fields. Pieces of fabric that looked like part of the balloon were found, but no one could find the basket or any sign of Daniel and Emily. The town was heartbroken. Emily's friends wrote messages and tied them to balloons, hoping somehow she would see them. Daniel's co-workers posted flyers, and the local news covered the story every night. As time passed, hope began to fade. Some people said maybe the wind carried the balloon much farther than anyone thought. Others believed Daniel would find a way to protect Emily and bring her back. Emily's grandparents stayed by the phone day and night, waiting for news. The pain of not knowing was the hardest part. But even as the weeks turned into months, and months into years, the memory of that day stayed alive in Willow Creek. Daniel and Emily's story became a legend, told in schools and at family dinners. People prayed for answers. Some even searched on their own, refusing to believe that the father and daughter were truly gone. And somewhere, out there, the truth was waiting hidden in the thick forests and silent hills, ready to change everything. When it finally came to light,